Good evening and welcome to Behind the Headlines. My name is Timothy Nyangweso. It's about 7 months come next month to the elections, the general elections of 2026, and the clock is ticking. Parties like the Democratic Party, the FDC, the National Unity Platform, the National Resistance Movement, and the UPC have put their roadmaps out. But in the past, we have seen alliances come alive. We have seen pressure groups come alive. But most of all, the question is, can we have an election without violence in this country? Even as we draw closer, we wonder what these roadmaps are for, especially looking at the prices that are for nomination fees. Have our politics become so commercialized that we have nothing to discuss about them? We go further to also look at the Equal Opportunities report that came out that talks about the army being deployed there. It also goes further to ask groups like prisoners, people in the diaspora, can they be considered? What will government respond to such questions? Let me get to the panel here that is going to be discussing this patent issue of roadmaps, what they mean for us, but also elections moving forward. On my immediate left, Dr. Sarah Berete, a lawyer, an observer of elections, but also the executive director for the Center of Constitutional Governance in Uganda. Good evening, Doctor, and it's good to have you.
Thank you, Timothy. Good evening, fellow panelists and viewers. It's always good to be on UBC Behind the Headlines.
Next to Dr. is Godba Tumshabe, who is a lawyer, a policy analyst, a director at the Great Lakes Institute of Strategic Studies. He's with us this evening. Good evening, Godba, and it's good to have you.
Yeah, great pleasure to be here. Good evening, our viewers.
There was a quote that was given somewhere. I will bring it up in one of the questions. It caught me.
It caught you?
It was a quote that caught me.
Okay.
Yes. I want to sound like Honorable Midday. A bit there. Next to Godba is Honorable Fred Mukasa Mbide, who is the Deputy President of the Democratic Party and the Chief Mobilizer of the President General come their delegates conference in Mbara. Good evening, sir. It's good to have you.
Thank you very much, Timothy, and of course, the panelists and viewers. I extremely usually bask in euphoria each time you invite me here. It's an honor.
Thank you very much. I hope when I cut out some clips of what you have said before, we can have it there. Next to the Honorable is a veteran politician, former leader of opposition, a farmer. Honorable Professor Latigo, Ogenga Latigo, is with us this evening. Good evening, Professor, and it's always an honor to have you.
Thank you very much, Timothy. And it's a great pleasure to have me on this panel with these colleagues of mine. And good evening, viewers of UBC.
Someone asked me, the professor, I said, the professor
of insects. Yeah, and you can quote Odong Oto on that.
Lastly but not least, our Honorable Minister of Cabinet in charge of ICT and National Guidance, National Vice Chairman, Western Uganda, the National Resistance Movement, representing the people of Kinkizi East in Parliament, Dr. Chris Baryomunsi. Doctor, good evening, and it's good to have you.
Thank you very much, Timothy. Good evening, fellow panelists. Good evening, viewers out there. I am happy to be back on this show. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you. You can be part of the show. Go to our YouTube channel, drop your comment there, let us know what you think. We're also streaming live on X. Drop your comment there. The number to send your message both by text and WhatsApp is 0709 60 25 92. And let's get into this conversation. So the National Unity Platform put out its roadmap. DP put out its roadmap. UPC put out its roadmap. FDC put out its roadmap. The National Resistance Movement put out its roadmap earlier on this month, and all of them are in, the temperatures are rising as the country goes on there. But let me get to Dr. Sarah. Doctor, when you look at these roadmaps, from the hindsight of both being an observer, being a lawyer, but also a champion of civic education, a lot of things have been said. What's your reading of these roadmaps? What's your reading of where we're going as a country?
Well, first of all, the preparation for the 2026 elections, I think that the people have largely been abandoned. Yet democracy is about the people. The simple definition of democracy, if you look at the original Latin words of demos and kratos, demos means people and kratos means power to rule. It's the rule of the people. The Electoral Commission representing government is busy rolling out the roadmap. I think they are almost going for nomination of special interest groups.
Yes.
The political parties have put up, their calendar for internal elections. Most of them seem to be hiking nomination fees. They are putting, the NRM and UPs have put nomination fees for MPs at 3 million. The UPC has put nomination fees for the presidential candidate at 20 million. The Democratic Party, I think it's 10 million. I'm not sure about the NRM, the presidential fees.
20 million.
Yes. So we seem to be saying that even internal as a party, leadership is for the rich. Because nomination fees is just one of the costs that you incur in elections. You need money for posters, you need money for your campaign team, you need money for transport, your own fuel and other things. You need money for communication teams, media, budget. So nomination is just a small fraction of what you need. So if internally, internal parties are collecting the same nomination fees, like the national process of electoral commission, are we saying that people with the less money should be eliminated in leadership? Are we saying that the most qualified people to lead this country must have money, or are those with money? What is the message at party level, internal party level? If you look at generally, elections are very expensive. And it's no wonder that some leaders have turned it into a business where they invest. We had conversations with the people who had won to go to parliament after the 2021 elections. Many of them were just talking of, I have invested 500 million. In the first 2 years, I should have got 600 million back. And in 3 years, I get some profit. They are talking in terms of business. These are people who should be in private sector. If they are looking at investment, profits, and harvesting more money beyond, they should be in private sector. They are misplaced in leadership. If you come to the payments also for the politicians, in the country, politicians are the most top paid people. More than professors, more than any other person. What message are we sending out there? That politics is a business, that there is no room for servant leadership to emerge. And it's no wonder that some of the people even negotiate the budget for kickbacks, like we saw some of the MPs that were arrested. They are getting kickbacks on a budget. They are demanding for commission from agencies. This is the mentality of, I have invested, I must get my money back with profit. They are not looking at serving the people. They are not looking at promoting constitutional governance, like is the function of MPs under Article 79. They are just looking at money. So we have, as a country, reduced leadership to a monetary bargain. I don't see room for a social contract. When it comes to processes, you talked of voter education. I have seen, I think, a digital poster after golf course of the Electoral Commission. I don't know how many posters they've erected countrywide. I don't know how many Ugandans have seen, even that digital poster. Yes. So I don't know how many people are receiving voter education in this country. I don't know, and I don't think it's beyond like 3%. So are we preparing elections for the people? about the people, like democracy demands, or it's a business, we are organizing some grand auction for people with money to compete with one another. The highest bidder takes the flag, the highest bidder takes the seat, and the country will be a pure transactional arrangement.
Thank you. Let me bring in Godba. Godba, somewhere I heard you say something about a big problem of Uganda. But when you look at these, and what Dr. Sarah said, when you look at what is playing out, these roadmaps, in your analysis, how are they shaping the politics of this country?
Yeah, no, Timothy, I don't know if that's the right question to answer because you see how are they shaping? No, this roadmap cannot shape anything because you are dealing with a systemic problem, which is really more or less like strangled by structural limitations. So when we think about elections in this country, you have to go back into the history and probably start with 2001 elections. That's when the most visible violence, in 1996 had some violence, but 2001 basically violence entered into the elections and entered with the military. You remember that's the time when Dr. Besigye first contested. So we had violence entering the elections. We had violence escalating in 2006. In 2011, the elections were not so contested. So the violence was a bit kind of like mitigated. It was subdued. But then we had an escalation in 2016. That's when we had an election. For the first time, we had an election where a winner is announced and there is deafening silence. Because basically, the UPDF had taken over the whole of Kampala. Kampala looked like there was a military coup. If you remember, President Museveni stayed out of Kampala, I think, for like 2 weeks. He was in Rwachitura. He addressed his first press conference in Rwachitura. And then from there, he headed to Kasese, if I remember very well, either Kasese or Fort Poto. Again, you see the escalation of the violence, and then you reach 2021, where, as I've already said, we had to kill each other. More than 100 Ugandans killed. And more than 1,000 people arrested, others kidnapped and put in jail for us to be able to have an election. So, as far as I'm concerned, when you don't have a country that has gone back to those issues and addressed them and say, why do we have to kill each other for us to elect a president? Is that really what we should be doing as a people who are educated, civilized? Because we have people in government, the Christopher Yumu says, these are very highly educated people. But how is it possible that we can sleepwalk into a problem? And the fundamental, and of course you know that the courts have said there's need for reforms. At some point, people in the cabinet, I think as early as 2011, came up with a raft of proposals for reform. Almost everybody has claimed that their votes have been stolen, including the president. The president has claimed twice and put it in writing during I think that's 2011 or 16, the elections of Brendan Abukenya in Luwero. He wrote a very long missive, basically talking of how his party was cheated. Now recently you heard him say that the NUP people stole 1 million of his votes. And you see, Ugandans, we take some of these things lightly, but when a president of a country, the fountain of honor, publicly comes out and says his 1 million votes were stolen, and he didn't report to police, he can't reprimand the Electoral Commission, where is the appointing authority, then you know that you are actually dealing with a crisis. So, as a country, I think that, first of all, we have to agree that we are not prepared to do an election that gives Ugandan citizens integrity.
Why do you say we're not prepared?
Yeah, as long as the violence has been escalating and now you have to reach a point where you have to kill each other as a people. And everybody is complaining that the electoral process is rigged to the point that even a president complains that his votes are stolen. And because you would imagine that a president, because for him he has the best intelligence. So when he says, my votes were stolen, it means that he even knows who stole the votes. But he's incapable of taking action. So that's what I'm saying. We are not prepared to be able to do elections. And that's why you are seeing that even now you have these groups. Because you see, the other thing I should mention is that right now we don't have political parties. We have political groups. These are basically small groups of people. So when you hear Mbide is a mobilizer, please, Ugandans, we pretend so much. So we start arguing about DP as a political party, as you know, and then NRM as a political party, NRM which basically has mutated into a state and turned the state of Uganda into a political party. And then all these other groups. So I think that Ugandans, we are pretending so much. We pretend that we are running a multi-party democracy when we are not. We pretend that we have political parties. My friend Mbide here and others, when they talk about we are opposition, you think that these are very, very serious people, that they can reshape the agenda of this country, and I think that they have failed. So whether FDC has announced, whether DP has announced, whether whoever has announced, it really doesn't matter. At the core, for me, at the core of this country is that we are not having a national conversation about us and about Uganda and the issues that affect our people. The political issues, the questions of rule of law, the economic issues, the social issues, the issues of justice. We are not addressing them. In fact, the challenge is that, I think the big challenge is that we have spent almost, right now, we've spent approximately 3 years. We are now in the 3rd year, where the main discussion has been Museveni and his son. We don't talk about the real issues that affect us as a country. And I think that's where the crisis is. And it's a crisis of leadership. It's not about roadmaps. It's not about, I don't even think it's about electoral reforms. It's about leadership. Right from the top to the bottom, as a country, I think we lack what I would call transformative statesmanship, leadership, where you have leaders that put Uganda above self and above their political groups. Everybody is there fighting in their small enclaves, as if there is no tomorrow.
Good, but before I come to Honorable Mbide, you mentioned elections. If not elections, what are the alternatives? What is the alternative?
Oh, I've said time and again that because remember, Timothy, I have been involved in the political process in one way or the other. I think my deepest involvement in the politics was 2016 during the Democratic Alliance. And I learned 2 things from the Democratic Alliance process. 2 major lessons for me. That one, the Uganda that we desire as a generation will not be built on existing political formations. I think we can, the point here is that all these political groups, they are important because they are part of our entire architecture. But ultimately, they are not the formations around which we build the future. They are just part of the formations. The second one is that after seeing what went on in 2016 and now what has been recurring, I am also convinced that the Uganda, a stable, democratic and prosperous country where there is shared opportunity, equal opportunity, shared prosperity, will not be delivered through elections, because the elections that we organize now, I actually call them military operations. For me, I see elections in Uganda as a military operation. If you don't understand it, you have to see what happened in Kawempe, where the military had to deploy battle hardware to be able to organize just a small election of just one MP. That shows you that elections are run as a military operation. So I have been arguing and really trying to convince people that the Uganda that we desire now as a generation is going to have to be negotiated. It will not just be that we've gone to the ballot, to the polling stations and voted. And I don't envisage, for example, that there is a situation where President Museveni said, I have lost election, and he's there at Korora and he's handing over to Mbide, or even Ogenga, or even Chris, by the way, he's yeah.
You should actually be handing over to me.
I don't see that. So the Uganda that we have to be looking for now has to be negotiated, and it cannot be negotiated among the political groups. It has to be negotiated among Ugandans. So those are the political people, the different ethnic formations, the professional bodies, the cultural institutions. This is what constitutes Uganda. And let me end with one point, which is about which is a very big factor in our elections, because Ugandans are being traumatized and stigmatized for belonging to their different ethnic and different interest groups. I think Ugandans, we need to be bold and be able to communicate that there is no contradiction in belonging to an ethnic group and being a Ugandan. I think that I can celebrate being a Munyankore and a good Ugandan.
And I want to come back to that one, Godba.
Yes.
Because it's one of those things that is an undertone for this election.
Very, very serious
and has
undertone.
been an undertone
Very
for,
serious
for quite a
undertone.
number of elections.
Yeah, yeah.
Let me come to Honorable Mbide. Honorable, I have hosted you here thrice.
Yes.
You have slapped the corporations agreement left, right, and center. Why the change of heart?
No, there is no change of heart. Actually, nobody is going to vote for the agreement. It is not part of the candidature as prepared for the Democratic Party. In fact, we are worried it might become a campaign issue, particularly by those Wazuks that have not understood what it actually stands for. Our accusation on matters of the cooperation agreement are geared towards the failure to have it implemented. Otherwise, the issues that are enshrined in the agreement are exactly what Godba has been talking about. Now that the cooperating entity, NRM, merely by chicanery, chose to use the cooperation agreement as an instrument to weaken the DP, we cannot assist it in the circumstances by continuing to weaken it the more. So we have shelved the discussions on the agreement and chosen to stabilize the party. So stability of our party cannot be based on who we cooperate with outside the party. We are basing it on how we cooperate internally, so that we can now sort out the proceeding atmosphere going forward.
Honorable Mbide,
Yes.
the cornerstones of that corporations agreement are national dialogue,
Yes.
a peaceful transition of
Yes.
power. It also has a national reconciliation. Aren't you being hypocritical? Because last year there was a discussion of the renewal of that corporations agreement, and your President General commented on that. Aren't you just trying to find legitimacy in keeping some executive roles within the conclave of the DP there?
There were preceding discussions, preceding pronouncements, but that were concluded in a meeting of the National Executive Committee and the National Council at Soroti, if you remember correctly. Now, what took place there was I presented a motion for an issuance of a notice to show cause to the NRM why the cooperation agreement should not be terminated. That is one of the procedures that you can go through if you have got anything written as equals. Then there was also another motion that was issued to establish assessment of the level and the degree of cooperation. So by decision, the Democratic Party is considering termination, and the procedures shall be debated in the first National Executive Committee after reconstituting a leadership of the Democratic Party, because it is urgent and that has not been handled as yet. So there is no going back against it. We are proceeding unconcernedly, and the cooperation agreement is not a governance issue of the party. It is a governance issue of Uganda. So you cannot use it as a tool of establishing who must lead DP. Now, that is what we are not doing.
My last question to you before I move to Professor.
Yes, but I have not even...
I'm going to come to
you. You
you.
are giving me a different approach,
but
I can handle. Yes.
One of the things that the President General said was the reason he's seeking a fourth term is to settle the turbulence within DP. What turbulence is this?
Yeah, because in DP, and given the interpretations given by the colleagues here, in Uganda, because we have had a dire lack of relative political maturity, and particularly knowledge of running political organizations, persons within political parties think that every opinion is a faction. Yet opinion is the objective reasons that make it a logical necessity for parties to be arranged and organized in terms of organs. Now the organs are established to debate the multiplicity of opinions, so that decisions have to be followed. But because we had, you can imagine, and when the NRM government came to power by 1986, from that time up to 2005, there was an article, and I think it was Article 269, that banned the operation of political parties, and instead established a system based on individual merit. Now, for 19 years, nobody was going to talk about the operation of political parties. That meant that we have a dire lack of knowledge of how political parties operate. Now let me tell Ugandans how parties operate. First of all, if you want to belong to a party, the independent opinion is never sacrosanct. You must be prepared to surrender independent opinion at the whims of majority opinion that has actually carried the day. And this is something that Ugandans do not know. So Ugandans are guided by, gladiatorial independent supremacy, where somebody thinks that they are supreme, they have got a supreme idea, contrary even to a party idea that has actually been taken as a decision. So in Uganda, we are still dealing with that. But what we are considering here is cause and effect. In Uganda, like Godba has also stated, we don't have political parties operating. In fact, what we are doing is majorly an answer to what has been established in Uganda by government. Because you see, however much you win, your actions should always be determined by the actions of your opponent. We can't do more than that. There is a predatory nature of the state when it comes to do with political parties. At the subconscious level of the brain of the state, they are actually guiding themselves with the mortality rate of political parties. So they are like vultures. And when you are surrounded by vultures, please try not to die. And that is the major principle that you must work on. Because clearly, each death that materializes is food for the vultures. What we are doing as political parties is a refusal to die. In fact, you should congratulate us that while surrounded by vultures, death is not our priority. And this is what we are doing as the Democratic Party. Sometimes we even pride ourselves in saying, somebody has been telling me that we have taken so long without taking power. We are the oldest party. We are dead, a dead party. I said, okay, maybe death is our style of life. Because you see, yeah, because long stay is durability. I know of parties that I doubt would exist without, of course, power in their own hands. They would quickly go back to the hands that they were when they actually did not have power yet. So, in Uganda, whatever we are doing is an answer to what is existing. You have posed questions of for example, candidates' fees. Now, in light of what has existed, you know that first of all, campaign financing has been curtailed as much as practicable. Even the indirect assistance that we used to obtain from civil society has been curtailed by way of capacity building workshops and all that. I know that civil society that clearly puts its eyes on the development of capacity building for political parties would actually not celebrate 2 Christmas days. So you can imagine capacity building financing is curtailed, campaign financing, it's internationally and even internally is curtailed, of course pursuant to the economic processes that go on in Uganda. And what is the incumbent party doing? They have established a system of prebendalism. They are helping themselves to the resources as much as possible. So this is not political parties versus any other party. There is no party that operates in Uganda, not even NRM. When we are talking about parties being actually unfree, I know that the Honorable Bariomunsi, who is now a chairperson, vice at that of a political party, I know that there is no time when the incumbent is actually scared that SEC is about to sit, and that he's scared, he does not know what they are going to decide. In any case, they are the ones who now keep asking for the mood of the incumbent. How is his mood? So you can't say that these are political parties. So these are just, he has choreographed a system of puppetry so that he is the puppet master. And all the other institutions, including his own party, government institutions and everything, are just by way, he's the puppet master, these are just muppets. And he's the one who pulling strings for decisions that should be taken from top to bottom. And that cannot be, it's not a political party. Even NRM, these are just cloaks and uniforms put on when it is season period. For example, finally there is a time when actually they were having a delegates conference. One time. Usually these delegates conferences of NRM are organized during times when we have grasshoppers. It is a season. So the delegates had fled into collecting grasshoppers, and by the time they returned, they were told that, yeah, nobody has opposed the incumbent. So the delegates conference is a thin veneer. It is just like a thin skin covering otherwise fake wood inside. The Chinese usually do it. So we don't have political parties operational, but we have something that answers. Because we know we are operating like persons that have undertaken an accident. When a car knocks you, the driver does not teach you how to limp. We are just limping. And that is what we are doing as political parties.
Thank you. I'll be back to Honorable Mbidide. Prof, let me come to you. You have been in the seasons of the political nature of our country. When you look at 2026 and look at these roadmaps, and look at an ordinary Ugandan, you were talking about Noya before we came on set there. Where is the symbiosis between what we hear as roadmaps and what a Ugandan really desires? And the stakes for 2026?
Thank you very much. You know, we have had three perspectives. But for me, I agreed to come so that I can say what I've consistently said. We will be wasting time, and really valuable time, if we don't recognize that in this country, the governance issues and the use of politics for governance doesn't exist. All you need to do is, at some stage, ask Chris, because a party that has been ruling will lift its successes and says, these are the things that we have achieved. And if you give us the next mandate, these are the things, the gaps that we want to fill, and the new opportunities and challenges that we want to address. You sit in the politics of Uganda and you try to look for those things as a motivation for participation, and you'll not find. The reason why you have seen, in terms of active politics, me, Latigo, have receded. I don't know how to waste my time. And therefore, while you talk about party roadmaps, roadmap to where? To elections? And you stop at elections? A roadmap to success and governance? The roadmap is to where? If I asked Mbide, 'Mbide, your roadmap is to where? Your roadmap is to where? If I asked Mbide, 'Mbide, your roadmap is to where? If I asked Mbide, 'Mbide, your roadmap is to where? If I asked Mbide, 'Mbide, your roadmap is to where? If I asked Mbide, 'Mbide, your roadmap is to where? If I asked Mbide, 'Mbide, your roadmap is to where? to just participate in an election and you are happy that you have participated? To challenge the ruling party on its failures, its commissions and omissions? What? To where? And it is very sad because you just leave these nice places, leave Sheraton, go to Kisenyi, go to any of the suburbs of Kampala. You get hit by the challenge of poverty, the challenge of desperation, and you ask yourself, what have we as Ugandans done to God that we should be in this state? And that our leaders cannot even see that our situation is wrong and we really need to address it. And so for me, I would urge the parties that while you pursue a roadmap for elections, the primary roadmap that we should pursue is a national dialogue where we lay on table the challenges that this country faces. Not the party faces or sees, the challenges that this country faces and what we can collectively do about it. Until we come to a situation where we can work as Ugandans. In 2014, when the NRM was having its delegates conference in Nambole, and the delegates conference was to remove Amama Mbabazi from Secretary General. I was going home and I saw these buses and people singing. I reached home, I could not sleep. I came down to watch TV, I could not watch. So I went to my study and sat down and wrote that article, Political Succession, Why Can't We Learn from Trees? And I've never spoken as passionately about the politics of our country and the inevitable and chaotic end that it will lead us to. Because ours is the dominant tree politics. President Museveni is so overbearing that even within their parties, was it you or Godba was saying, when they are going for a meeting, does the president shake that the National Executive Council is going to squeeze me today? Or it is these guys who shake because you fear your mouth might slip, like they say in Acholi, dogo chair, and you say something that will upset the president and you'll pay a price. A politics that is done that way, a professor of insects cannot be part of it.
Thank you very much. Let me come to Dr. Chris. Honorable Minister, especially on the things that have been mentioned, let's talk about your roadmap, the NRM roadmap that is coming. Like Professor asked, where is it going?
Well, when the NRM came to power, it came with a 10-point program, which was expanded to 15, but we usually crystallize it into 4 ideological areas. And point number 4 is democracy. And the NRM came up with that point because of the history of this country, that from independence, we saw the journey Uganda took. It was not the good one, because from 1962, October, when we got independence, to 1986, January, when NRM came, a period of 24 years, we had only elections once. That was December 1980, which elections we also challenged, which forced President Museveni and his team to go to the bush. So the NRM came with one of the ideological pillars being democracy, meaning that Ugandans should be empowered to choose and decide on who should lead them. And that's why, with the promulgation of the 1995 Constitution, from 1986, we've been going into elections. Of course, 2006, we went into multi-party politics, and we've been moving. So on that front, in terms of participation of Ugandans being able to choose leaders that they want, I think we are making progress basing on the history and where we are coming from. So anybody who doesn't see that probably may need Garubindi glasses, that transition from independence through the 80s, 90s to now. If you see when it comes to the electoral period like now, and see how Ugandans are very active, and now with the political parties coming up with their own roadmaps, it shows how Ugandans are participating. Just this morning we had a SEC meeting, the Central Executive Committee of NRM, and we've been calling for expression of interest for NRM members who would want to contest in the NRM structures, as well as flag bearers for LC1 positions. And we're reviewing the participation up to yesterday, because we have closed today evening. And the huge numbers of Ugandans across the country, from Western Nile to Karamoja to Chigezi, who have expressed interest. It really gives comfort that Ugandans are awake and they participate in the politics, just judging from NRM. And I'm sure the other political parties also have their own internal processes. So in terms of participation...
Let me ask, you're talking about participation.
Yes.
And I would like to know what yardstick you're using, because my yardstick that I would use are 57% of voters that turned up, that didn't turn up for elections, 13% that showed up in Kawempe, about 66% showed up in 2016. So when you talk about participation, while you have the highest prices for presidency, 20 million, for MP, 3 million, for district chairpersons, what yardstick are you using to discuss this participation of Ugandans interested in leadership of this country?
Well, when you look at, first of all, the constitution that we have put in place and the governance structures that are provided for, from LC1, LC2, LC3, the district councils, then the parliament, and then that's the mainstream structure of government. You have youth councils, women councils, councils of PWDs, older persons. All these are structures where Ugandans participate to be in leadership. Now, in addition to the party structures. So from that front, there is that participation in leadership at different levels. Yes, the turn-up at voting may not have been 100%, and it's an issue that we must address. But you cannot say that Ugandans do not participate or do not have a chance to be part of the political architecture in the country. They are involved. So, answering your question of what do the roadmaps mean, to me it is positive that we took a decision to go multi-party, and political parties are participating in the electoral processes. Probably what lacks, and I to some extent agree with my colleagues who said, do we have political parties? Some of the parties are probably political individuals, and they do not even have a clear agenda that they sell to the country. Especially when you look at the time we went into multi-party politics. You are talking about violence. You look at the language some of the parties have been using. We shall not allow them to, if you translate that language, even when you finish elections, you completely can say they will not be sworn in. That kind of belligerent, extremist, radicalized kind of language which has been propagated by some of the actors, which we should condemn. We should condemn. And therefore, to me, there is progress in as far as governance and democracy and participatory democracy is concerned. Yes, there are challenges which we must address. One of the challenges is that we seem to promote adversarial politics. At times some parties and actors just spewing messages of hatred instead of selling their manifestos, selling their ideological points on where they stand. They are just saying, no, NRM has overstayed, Museveni has overstayed. That cannot be a reason for you to exist as a political party. A political party must have its ideological position, which it says. If you are FDC, if you are NUP, if you are DP, if you are UPC, you bring your position on national issues, and the voters will compare your position with that of NRM. But the challenge has been, many of them are just complaining, transition, succession. The succession will come. Each party brings its own candidate. And for us as NRM, up to now, we are satisfied with the President Yoweri Museveni, and that's why we front him. Those of you who think that he is overbearing, that we don't discuss with the structure of the party, you are wrong. You are wrong. We have robust debates, including challenging him and opposing his views, and he usually yields when you have a viewpoint. It's not true that we just go in the party organs, meetings, and only just clap and say, yes, sir, yes, sir. I can tell you no. And the time will come when this question of succession will definitely be on the table. President Yoweri Museveni is a human being. Time will come when either he ages or we as a party can say, you can no longer be our candidate. And I can assure you, NRM has many capable candidates who can come to succeed President Yoweri Museveni within the party and also lead the country. Only that for now, we still believe in him and we front him as a strong candidate. And we have no regrets, no apologies to make, because in football, you put your best players. If Arsenal is playing with the Manchester United, it should not be Arsenal tell Manchester United that you remove that goalkeeper or remove that striker and put so and so. No, for you, prepare your strikers and your goalkeepers, and we prepare ours. What is important is for us to give an opportunity to create an environment where Ugandans make a decision. And indeed, we've been going to the polls, and Ugandans decide. Are you saying President Yoweri Museveni and NRM are in power by force, or it's by the will of Ugandans out there? And the answer is the latter.
I'm going to give. I know Godba and Honorable Mbide they want to respond, but let me ask this question, Honorable Minister. When the coffee bill was around,
yes,
and this clip was played here on UBC,
yes, where
members of the caucus would stand up and tell the president about coffee, and then end it with, "We seek your indulgence." So I don't know what part of discussion and opposition is there, but let me put it three ways so that Honorable Minister, you can respond.
Yes.
On the issue of radicalism that you've mentioned, if we just take the example of Kawempe, Or let's take the example of 2021. The Equal Opportunities Commission has just said the army should be stopped from being deployed. The Constitution gives the police the mandate, and the army comes in at the request of the police. But it seems to be vice versa, even in Kawempe. So you, as the government, seem to be fanning the flame of radicalism that is being mentored or reciprocated to you by the public. Lastly, when you talk about, Andrew Mwenda was here last week, and he said the NRM is like a creeping plant, if I am to quote him verbatimly. Once you remove the tree, the creeping plant will die. The question to you, Honorable Minister, can the NRM function without the president, without the state, and without state resources? How?
Okay, let me answer your questions. Coffee Bill. In NRM, we use the concept of what we call democratic centralism. It's what guides the debate within the NRM party structures. What it means is that members are free to give their views even when some of their views are contrary to say what the president wants or what the leaders want. So there is a free debate. That's why it is true that during the debate in the caucus, some members were opposed to the proposition from the executive. By the end of the discussion, the party caucus, the organ, takes a decision, a collective decision. And our rules now, when you take a decision, then you are bound by the decision of the majority. That's how it works. That's how it works. So you are free to speak your mind. By the end of the day, you take a collective decision, and when you go to parliament, you support that party position. And there is no contradiction. And the parties all over, that's how they work. We usually have organized whipping systems. So in NRM, that's how we function. So it is true, some members within the caucus can give contrary views. By the end of the day, what matters is the majority position that you have taken. Regarding the violence, in 2021, you just need to get back. There is a situation which had been created in central Uganda, especially Kampala, where people putting on yellow were being beaten. Do you remember? And many of you were not condemning it simply because they were beating NRM people. Even the innocent people just putting on the yellow color, not even a t-shirt or uniform of NRM. Women were being unaddressed. And you recall when the Honorable Chaguranyi was arrested in Iruka. Now, his supporters turned violent in Kampala and the metropolitan area. And that attracted security to come and quell the situation.
How to quell the situation?
To quell the situation, yes.
How the situation was quelled, Honorable Minister?
Yes, because it was a riotous environment. I was pelleted with stones. My vehicle was damaged in Ruwero. We were coming from a SEC meeting in Guru. Reaching Ruwero, they had cut off the whole area. The whole place was barricaded. My vehicle was stoned, the glasses were broken. So are you saying we should have gone and brought a red carpet for those people stoning us? So the security had to come in. And unfortunately, the people died, which is regrettable. But the security came in to quell that kind of situation. So a brother of mine who was traveling from Kanungu, he was hit in Chengera here. He slept somewhere in the bush. He could not reach Kampala. So unless you are saying that kind of behavior must be supported simply because they are opposition challenging government, the reason why the state exists, why there is a government, it must protect all of us.
And Honorable Minister, what we're saying is we don't put out fire with fire. That's the violence. And as the state, it is your mandate to protect people and their property. How comes it's not equitable when it comes to how you quell a situation?
What do you mean? If people are violent and they are injuring people...
Do they have guns? Are they firing? You saw videos of people being fired at in buildings.
Did you see somebody trying to hammer a police woman in Kampala with a hammer?
That was wrong. We condemn violence, Honorable Minister. We're not supporting it. So what we're saying is how we handle it escalates a situation to what you're calling radicalism?
You see, you don't consume intelligence like some people in the government do. At times you have intelligence which shows you what situation is about to happen. You know, it's Newton who drafted the law, the third law of motion, that every action is an equal and opposite reaction. So sometimes, depending on how the riotous groups are behaving, the kind of intelligence that the security people have, that can inform the kind of reaction. But definitely nobody condones violence. We should all condemn violence in all its forms. When it comes to Kawempe, I agree with you that the law, the constitution and the laws provide for police to be the ones to secure all of us. In situations where police is maybe overwhelmed, it can invite the army to come in. As a party, we condemned the presence of the army in Kawempe by election. And we were very clear, yes, as the NRM, because we met and we said it was uncalled for to have the army in Kawempe.
How can a ruling party condemn instead of stopping the army?
Huh?
How?
Yeah. No, you must distinguish
How?
a government, a state,
now you have
and a
said-
political party.
Now you have
No, the NRM is in power.
No,
Gentlemen,
yes,
let
I
the
hope-
minister finish. I'm going to give you opportunities to rebut.
When he comes here,
Yes.
he is the one we are prosecuting.
Yes, and I'm answering you.
So we need to be answering. Really,
And I'm going to give you the time,
Yes.
Honorable Mbide. Let the minister finish his submission.
Yes, and we even called for an investigation, and an investigation is underway. Absolutely.
Who is
If you
investing?
didn't know, now look at me and listen to me.
Who is investing?
Some things went wrong.
Dr. Asari is asking who is
Who is
investigating.
investigating? Who is
Wait for the
investigating?
report. Investigators are investigating.
Okay.
Yes,
O-
but
Honor-
you must distinguish
yes.
that there is a state, there is a political party. For instance, do you want to say police is a department of NRM party?
At
Or
least-
the army is a
At
department
least
of NRM
for now
party?
it is.
By-
For now it
by
is.
conduct.
Okay.
as the lawyers,
So-
really, why don't we?
Let me come.
We
Let me,
need to help the country. Because
Honorable
I've had
Mbide,
that argument severally.
Honorable Mbide, I'm coming to you.
Yes.
So
Please,
finally,
finally, Honorable Minister.
you were quoting Andrew Mwenda that the NRM is a creeping. That is his opinion. Who is he anyway? He's an individual, that is his opinion. He's entitled to his opinion. But I can tell you, at the risk of repeating myself, that yes, President Yoweri Museveni is a strong leader as a founder of NRM, but NRM is not President Yoweri Museveni, and President Yoweri Museveni is not NRM.
Thank you very much.
NRM is a mass party. We recently registered our members. The membership is the tune of 20 million Ugandans.
More than
And you cannot
Ugandans, eh?
say
More
the
than
20 million
Igbos.
members are just nothing.
Okay.
Even when time comes and President Museveni is off the stage, NRM will be there. Unless if you see us
We
and
shall
you
quote you on that one, Honorable
yes,
Minister.
quote me. I am being on record that NRM shall be. I have said earlier on. Who will be in charge? We have
Honorable Minister,
a
please
constitution which defines how succession within the party takes place, but also even the national constitution defines how succession at a national level takes place. So
Okay.
there should be no cause for worry. When you talk of dialogue, so far, we have governance structures, we have a parliament, we have district councils, we have all these platforms where Ugandans are able, we have talk shows like this one, where we are able to talk.
Okay.
So there are many platforms where Ugandans are able to air out their issues, and this can be processed by the relevant organs of the state and
Thank
the
you.
government. So there is no cause for worry.
Let me
as
pick.
far as
Let me pick
we are
on
concerned.
Honorable Mbide. Yes.
When the Honorable Minister comes here, clearly when we are raising grievances, he is the one we are prosecuting on behalf of government.
And I'm not complaining.
When you look at him, particularly when he's submitting, in law there is what we call veracity. Verity or dinkum oil, the truthfulness of a person while they are explaining a few things. The minister's truthfulness is definitely, of course, a logical impossibility to locate.
On what?
And this is what I am now going to present on. Number one, I have always had a multiplicity of arguments trying to delink the NRM party from the government. Well, the Political Parties and Organizations Act is very clear that a successful political party in a general election forms government. Yeah. That is the clarity that is available under the law.
They say so NRM government.
Yes. So it is inextricably bound together, and that is why what is being implemented is the manifesto of your party. So, but let us be truthful.
So according to you, the party the same as the government, they are the same.
They are inextricably bound together. Delinking them, because it is an opinion poll.
It's not the state.
If you fail to perform, the opinion poll definitely of government and governance falls on the political party. And clearly, it is on all of us with the common sense that that is what it is. Whether the result of an election is the representation of the choice of the people in Uganda is where you can rely to determine that Uganda is a democracy.
Okay.
I have always opined that in Uganda we don't have a democracy. We have got a soft dictatorship that has been defined in a multiplicity of words. Democratic, dictablanda, or the apertura democratica. Why? Because one.
I forgot my dictionary.
Ask Mr. Google.
Yes. and clearly, this is why I am saying so. I would like to benchmark, to make sure we look at examples. In Africa, for example, between 2024 and where we are now, we are designed to for example, hold the 17 elections. Only 13 of the 17 were held because others were postponed for obvious reasons. Burkina Faso, Mali, South Sudan, and all those. Much of the examples that we want to look at are majorly six elections. You can consider the seventh, which is Somaliland, that is struggling to be recognized as a country. But it held a democratic election. And the opposition won.
Okay.
5 of those, the opposition won. Why? It is incumbent upon how an election is organized, electoral reforms, and who definitely declares one a winner. When you look at, for example, Namibia, the Electoral Commission here in Uganda is appointed by a candidate. They jubilate at the appointment for having been given a job. So it is a question of to whom do you owe your allegiance. Simple. In Namibia, the Electoral Commission is arrived at by...
The Electoral Commission is supervised by your president.
And I am not saying that anybody supervising it is correct to that extent. So I can tell you, Honorable Bariomusi, in fact, you have given me now evidence that it is actually supervised by the president
and of DP, I mean.
Of DP,
yes.
And to that extent, it should be condemned.
He has not brought any proposals.
So I am here condemning it. Yes. And when you look at, because the Electoral Commission, the jurisdictions I'm talking about, South Africa, for example,
as you conclude,
the president does not appoint the Electoral Commission. He doesn't in Namibia. He does not in Mozambique. And clearly, you are looking at...
Even Kenya.
Yes, even Kenya
Tanzania.
Here. So those are jurisdictions where you can say there is a democracy. He's talking about 2021 in terms of the violence. No. Honorable Bariomunsi, you look at a choreographic process of violence orchestrated by this government, ranging from the Kalangala Action Plan in the 2000s, the Chiboko Squad in the 2000s. Every election has got its own Gestapo. We call it the Gestapos of Nazi Germany, or the Tonton Machutes of Haiti. The secret police that is organized usually to orchestrate violence against intended opposers. It exists in just different names. You either call it a Kalangala Action Plan, you call it a Chiboko Squad, you call it, now it is JAT. You know, that is what it is.
Foot soldiers.
Those ones are just...
Honorable, we need to go for a break.
They are only majorly gladiatorial. But I can tell you, once you organize material processes where disappearances of persons, death of persons, And after an election, almost every opposer is on either police bond or bail. You can't tell me that that is a democracy, unless you are telling me you have a very great sense of humor.
How many DP people are in
Okay,
jail?
I'm going to come back to Godba and Professor, but let me take a break. Let me first read some messages here. Thank you for the show. To me, elections in Uganda are irrelevant because the winner is always one person. The wise Ugandans cannot get a chance to lead this nation to a better place. When you have money, you will lead the nation. Even when you speak English that we don't. Okay, let me leave that one. Thank you, Timothy. In Uganda, everything seems to show that we need. Everything shows that the Ugandan country needs a factory reset. Political parties and the EC want money from voters. Too much money is needed for voting. Candidates want money or Uganda. This is Robert. Okay, thank you very much, Robert.
Voters want the money.
The last one is here. Good evening, Timothy and the panelists. My name is Wilson from Muyenga. While for us in the private business, we are grappling with high taxes, shortage of business enabling environment, services, civil servants and politicians' direction, people representing us are planning on the final assault to the economy. High nomination fees enabling processes of professionalism and maintaining and sustaining corruption. This is a move to get us high in debt. Nothing good is expected of this. Finally, Gabriel from Iganga says, I wish the opposition leaders become presidential advisors. Huh? Okay, advisors, then wasting funds on nominations and campaigns. The country would develop because they have the ideas. However, a king will remain in power as long as his rule is honest, just, fair, and he quotes Proverbs 20:28 and says, let's see how we develop our country instead of struggling for power. Let's bring down the temperature with this commercial break.
It's super fast internet. Oh, it's a super camera. It's a super battery.
Phone battery full.
Yeah, it's a super deal. Get the Capote Super from MTN now at a reduced initial deposit of only 49,000 shillings and pay the balance in Pola for as low as 833 shillings per day. Grab this Super Capote deal and get 2 GB of free MTN data every month for 8 months. Get the Capote Super now from any MTN shop countrywide. Everywhere you go, MTN. Regulated by UCC.
Hey, Mukasa, where are you going with the family? Oh no. We are on our way to the polling station. The Electoral Commission is displaying the National Voters Register. And I need to make sure my name is on it. And Sophie here wants to confirm her voter details. We are all warming up for elections.
What about these young men? I can see you.
These ones are no longer boys. They are now men. Last election, they were too young to vote. But now, they are ready to vote.
Mukasa, you have really inspired me. Now let me also go home and pick my wife so that we can check the details in the register.
Okay.
See you on the polling station.
The National Voters Register will be displayed at your polling station from 25th April to 15th May 2025. Please do not miss this chance to confirm your polling station and your voter details. Report the dead for removal from the register and those who appear more than once. Every vote matters. This message is brought to you by the Electoral Commission of Uganda.
Ladies and gentlemen, here comes Peter, full speed, light turns red, and he's gone through. Oh, wow!
The Uganda Police introduces the Automated Express Penalty System, EPS Auto, powered by ITMS. Fair, fast, final, and always watching. Don't argue with the road. Just check, pay, move on with the UPF Mobi app. ITMS. Safe roads, safe nation.
The government's core mandate is to maintain law and order, safeguard citizens' rights, and provide essential public services.
Remember, one of the pillars of a roadmap is innovation and entrepreneurship.
There has been this question of how are you protecting our indigenous seed?
It's going to be a tall project that answers somebody's question.
For the past 20 weeks, the front bench has brought you insightful discussions on governance, security, healthcare, justice, and commerce.
When you go through this complicated procedure, involve the lawyers, you bring the case against him, the judge will hear you out and pass judgment, and you're out of court in record time.
We remain committed to keeping you informed and engaged on key national matters.
So these are huge, these are powerful organizations which now Uganda chairs. Why don't you come together?
If we haven't migrated to the e-card because of various reasons, including that not all the people of Uganda have smartphones.
You can sit in your house, apply for a passport.
If you have a Ugandan who has a successful logistics firm in the US, it means he can come to Uganda and do a lot more.
Now airing every Monday at 8:30 p.m. with me, Jethro Kasaiji, your interface with the government only on your public broadcaster, UBC, Inspiring Uganda.
Welcome back to Behind the Headlines. This is the last leg. My name is Timothy Nyangweso. In the studio, I'm joined by Dr. Sarah Birete, Godba Tumshabe. I'm joined by Honorable Mukasa Fred Mbide, Honorable Professor Ogenga Latigo, and the Honorable Minister, Dr. Chris Baryomunsi. And we're discussing everything, roadmaps, but also in hindsight to the end in mind, which is the elections. Numerous messages coming through. We'll be reading them in a short while, but let's get into this conversation as we come to the tail end there. Doctor, I want to start with, let me get the reactions from both Professor and then come back to you, Dr. Sarah. Godba, you wanted to respond to something that the Minister said, and then I'll give also an opportunity to Professor there. Yes?
No, of course I always find Chris very, very intriguing. He has very interesting ideas, but also very interesting way of explaining his things. The radicalization, Chris, I think that's one of the points where I really share with you, that the radicalization in this country is one of the biggest dangers that we have to deal with. But you have to understand it by looking at the fact that the NRM regime has been in power for 40 years. So at this moment, everything that we are looking at is a product of NRM. It cannot be, it can no longer be blamed on Idi Amin or Bote, you know, the excuses that you normally give. After 40 years, you have produced radicalism across the board. And in fact, one of the biggest dangers is that in all the different groups, whether it is in government, especially the army, the police, so even when then you go into the opposition, you find that the fringe elements, the radical elements are increasingly taking over. And so if you are thinking of building a stable country, you have to deal with that as a problem. The radicalization has been created by some of the ways that you have deployed the security forces. Right from the Black Mamba attack on the High Court of Uganda. You know, those operations where people are given a bail and you are going there brazenly, openly to arrest them. That's radicalization. The way the Buganda riots were dealt with, that's radicalization. The way the military has been, the military has been deployed in a parliament to beat MPs. You guys, you remember, you know what happened to you during the time of Naband, of the death of Naband, where I think there's a time, I think it's you and a couple of others who spent the whole 3 days hiding in parliament. And why were you hiding? Simply because you raised an issue, which was a legitimate question to say we need to know how our colleague died.
Okay.
So those are the elements that cause radicalization. And I think, that's a problem that we have to deal with. And I think the point that, that I was making with Professor Latigo is to say, those kinds of issues can only be addressed. The situation we are in now, you have to address it through a national dialogue process. Let me just one yes. quick comment on because Chris likes talking, and a couple of your colleagues like talking about, we have structures of governance, parliament, local government. All these are completely broken. Who trusts your parliament? All of you MPs, you go conspire with the president, you distribute our money amongst yourselves. Ugandans are watching you. So there is a huge trust deficit right now in those institutions of government and governance that you can no longer be the solution to the future.
Okay.
And I think it's humility that you would need to be able to say, no, we are the leaders, let's bring Ugandans together and talk about the future.
Thank you very much.
Does the next election?
I think, Honorable Minister, he's saying, how do we bring the country together? And it is your mandate as government to be able to pull us together.
Who told you to together?
Timothy, let me explain to Chris that I come from Ntungam. Ntungam is supposed to be a stronghold of NRM, so they claim. In my constituency of Nyachera, literally nobody voted. At my polling station, by 1 p.m., they had ticked all the ballot papers. And that happened across the constituency.
So you never voted?
No. In fact, my biggest problem was that my auntie, who was then 79 years, walked for 2 kilometers to go and vote. And he reached at the polling station and said, Mama, don't worry, we have done everything for you. You see, you need to know how...
I doubt the veracity using
you need to
know, Chris, of your assertions.
Chris,
I doubt the truthfulness.
You need to know how much this NRM of yours undermined the dignity of Ugandans when it comes to that vote.
Thank you. Professor.
You see, what about the radicalists? The next extremists, and I doubt. I will check the Electoral Commission results, see whether the opposition candidates got 000 in Nyachera. Because I know Nyachera.
Yes, Professor.
When I couldn't keep quiet, I was momentarily angry. But later I started sympathizing with Chris. You know, during Idi Amin's time, they would say, these are uneducated people.
That's right.
Even during Obote's time, they would say, they are uneducated. These are the most educated people. And they try to explain things that should not exist in our country. This country is so blessed by God that we should not be seeing poverty, that we should not be seeing anger, that we should not be seeing hatred. And the people responsible for all those are highly educated people like Dr. Chris Byaramunsi. President Museveni asked me to join him 3 times. The last time I told him, if some of us are not in opposition, things would even be worse. Because I don't believe in violence. I believe that talking not at each other but with each other can generate ways forward that will benefit everybody. And I also believe that if a government governs well, the greatest beneficiary of that good governance is the government itself. Because people will exalt them.
Okay.
But in this country, you reduce somebody like Chris to be an apologist of evil things that are happening in our country. God help him.
Thank you. Dr. Sarah, let me put let me put a question to you, and even as we have this, gentlemen, as we have this last round of questions, the Equal Opportunities Report was a beautiful report. I went through it, especially talking about the army, talking about those different groups that need to be there. What needs to be done for the country to move forward? When you look at that report and look at where we are, how do we move from here?
Well, the Equal Opportunities Commission raised questions around the diaspora vote.
Yes.
The abuse or misuse of the army during elections. The issue of commercialization of politics that discriminates against vulnerable groups and communities. The vote for people in gazetted areas or correction areas like prisons, among others. The question why diaspora cannot vote, I think, is largely political. I think government thinks diaspora members support opposition and maybe they have no vote. Because it's not rocket science. All citizens of other countries vote through embassies.
Yes.
Some vote by email, and these are fewer people. It's not that it will be overwhelming and you cannot, so all we need is a law to gazette embassies as polling stations. This is what every country does. Rwanda, Tanzania, Kenya, every country enables citizens to vote from wherever they are. People can come and vote physically at an embassy. We see Rwandans living here going to the embassy to vote. Kenyans living here going to the embassies to vote.
Yes.
Uganda claims to be a developed country and claims to be the leader in the region. But on what areas are we leading on? Can we even mention one?
Nothing.
Which PDM? Distributing cash. Oh my God. So if we cannot do basic things that are happening everywhere in the region, why do we deceive people that we are a leader in the region? I think it is political and it's deliberate. Just to deny people, majority of whom support change. That's the only reason diaspora cannot vote. The same applies to prison. These are correction. People are gathered in one place. Why don't you declare that place a polling station? It is as simple as that. There is even no need for transport. People are there. So why can't you facilitate them to vote? Either it is a government that has no clue on how to lead, or it's largely an underdeveloped government. Because I don't see any other reason. When it comes to questions of the army, the NRM uses the army for convenience, to perpetrate violence, make the people scared of making a free choice and keep itself in power. Kawempe, a simple urban constituency. We counted 30 members on a news clip. Article 212 of the Constitution is clear. The army can only interface with civilians in either situation of disaster or emergency. What was the disaster in Kawempe? Or emergency. What was it in Kawempe? So when you see, of course, a party that wins majority vote forms government. The question that Dr. Bariomuns says that there's a party and there's government. The NRM party is in power. The government we have today is the government of the NRM party. It's the government that is implementing, using taxpayers' money to implement the NRM manifesto. And the NRM party and its leadership are accountable for the excesses and abuses of state institutions. So when you send 30 members to Kawempe, I saw the NRM complaining in a caucus, in SEC, and the president
They're
wrote,
also in court.
the president, who is a chairman of NRM party, President of the Republic of Uganda, Commander-in-Chief of Defense Forces, wrote asking civilians what was the army doing. Really? Either one of us, either citizens or the leadership, one of these groups has a problem. President, Commander-in-Chief, meaning he is accountable to the people on the conduct of the army. Appointments of the army are not subject to any process of approval. Parliament does not approve who is a CDF today. It's a decision of the president, who is a chairman of NRM, who is a commander-in-chief. How dare do you write to citizens to explain what the army was doing? Really? Ugandans are very peaceful people.
Okay. Thank you. Godba, something you mentioned that really stuck with me, and especially the tribal undertones that have been around for a while, seem to be growing with every electoral cycle. And we might say them directly or indirectly. How do we insulate ourselves from this and benefit from our diversity to bring us together?
Yeah, I think that's really, for me, the important point about that we look at our differences more as diversity, not as a problem. Now, we've almost lived for these last 40 years of NRM, basically being told how we are, we are tribalists, our politics are tribal, and especially President Museveni normally talks about the question that we need politics that are based on interests. So what you've seen so far is to have interest groups like the youth, the women, the disabled, the elderly, all these groups coming, being brought into the political process. Now, while that sounds positive, most of these groups can also be manipulated politically. So the interests that are, the politics that are based on interests can also be the same as politics that are based on identity, because women is an identity. Youth is an identity. Elderly is an identity. So they have tried, what the NRM people have done is to try to almost stigmatize you and me being who we are. And that's why I keep on saying it is wrong for this country to be stigmatizing people because they are saying they have organized politically as a tribe. The Banyankore have interests. The Baganda have interests. The Achoris have interests. When this country was formed, when it was created in 1894, but more so at independence, it had these tribal groups. And they are who we are, incidentally.
And the districts were
Yeah.
tribally named.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, they were tribal named.
Lango,
Achori, Ankole, Toru. And these are very important identities for Uganda. I don't think that you can build a stable Uganda nation without these tribal formations getting together. And I really want to, I keep on encouraging Ugandans, we should be proud of our heritage.
Yes.
We should not apologize for being, I can't apologize for being a Munyankore because that's a historical coincidence. Yes. I could have been born an Achori. I could have been born a Karamajongo. So we need to be able to cherish these identities because they are important. In fact, these formations, in my view, they are the right building blocks for this country.
They are organic.
Yes, they are organic. And so I don't think that there is any contradiction in being a good Munyankore Ugandan, in being a good Achori Ugandan, in being a good Iteso Ugandan. I think these are mutually reinforcing, and what the leadership has tried to do is to almost make us fear who we are.
How do we find that national identity? What brings us together?
That is what we need to sit and negotiate. That if you brought these formations, we sat on a table, we should be agreeing, how do we live together? Do I, as a Munyankore, do I want to see Munyankore torturing Achoris? Is that what I want? Do I want to see Achoris stealing from Karamojong? Is that what we want? So when we are seated together, we would be able to say, how do we create a Uganda that works for all of us? Rather than people feeling like, oh, the Westerners have cheated us, the Baganda are killing us, the Achoris are not serious, because those are the stereotypes you hear, simply because everybody has tried to say that these tribal formation or ethnic formation are a problem, and yet they are the real nations that make Uganda. The state of Uganda is built on these nationalities, and we need to be able to organize ourselves and sit together and realize that we can actually prosper. Because you see, each of these nationalities, if you look at them, the major ones at independence, they are about 15. Yeah? If you look at them, these are embodiments of wealth, of culture, and of talent. How do you harness this to be able to build a prosperous Uganda? The idea that we should be scared and run away from them is just untenable. Someone is trying to build an artificial Uganda that doesn't work for us, that works for the builder.
If I may add something small, you know, these tribes have intermarried over time.
Of course.
There is no distinct tribe now that stands alone. We are all one people.
Thank you. Honorable Mbide, as you want to add to this, because we've had this conversation before, and I know you want to add to it, but
I wonder why Godiba does not even join the Democratic Party.
This whole
Some
thing.
Ugandan. That's some Ugandan.
Honorable Mbide, elections in this country have become a do or die, have become very expensive. One minister said she spent 500 million in a week. And today, if numbers have shown, to be a member of parliament is between 500 million to 1 billion shillings, or even more. This majority takes it all. Isn't it a time bomb waiting? And how do we resolve this conundrum?
Yeah, first of all, obviously, there is now a full-fledged hochi-pochi of politics in Uganda. It is a confused state of affairs.
Chris, look for hochi-pochi.
It is a totally confused state of affairs. I can tell you, like the question is, now I have been reading, because you see in Uganda now, we must know where the majority are. And I have now been reading a book titled How to Deal with Idiots by Maxwell. Because in my opinion, the most person is now to appeal to idiots will definitely carry the day. When you look at what has happened, there is one answer: freedom, because our tribes had been organized in such a way, except Banyarwanda, that they are actually regionally located. And only Banyarwanda and Barundi were the roving ethnic communities. So a system of devolution would definitely resolve questions of governance. Because that is how Uganda was formed, that is how it can be led. It is clear. It was an amalgamation of those formerly ethnic nations. The President of the Republic of Uganda has led Uganda in such a way that it was even punitive for anybody to think in terms of a tribe. People have only recollected that it was actually choreographed for his own benefit after almost getting 40 years. So he created his own tribes now based on how much money you have. Then the politics of the day was now also organized where politicians have now become tumbocrats, where tumbo refers to the stomach. Then instead of the entrepreneurs that would have formed the bedrock of the economy, we have tenderpreneurs. Now, persons that have got the access to government tenders. Now, the president now, so we have developed a system which is a dogmatic cult with a simply definable catechism and with the President Museveni as the high priest celebrating the mass. And this applies to the whole country. So that now whoever wants to sail safely, yes. So Chris here has no option. He does not have the opportunity to actually skedaddle from what has been laid out as a path. You must now consistently tow. He is moving. It is like a pendulum swing. Swinging from absolutism to democracy, and from democracy back to absolute dictatorship. And the duty of Chris is to cling on. If instead of clinging on the pendulum, you gaze upwards, you will become dizzy and fall off. The list is long of those that have fallen off, ranging from those that were very senior leaders, you gaze upwards, you become dizzy and fall off. Today, the president now appeals to every society in such a way that every appointed individual is appointed for purposes of mobilization. Yeah. So you have got now presidential advisor on ghetto affairs. Instead of appointing somebody that had actually the scientific process in his head to redeem the ghetto into a fully-fledged society, he appoints a victim. So when you pick a victim to advise you on how to actually to deal with the victim, it is a logical impossibility. So, and this is how it has been made. You appoint an artist to develop procedures on the art industry. These are not professionals. They produce very good music, but they are not even the composers. They sing stanzas so well, but these are not their ideas. So you appoint such a person to make sure you develop procedures for illuminating the art industry. That is a logical failure. So the system is completely flawed. If we attempted what Kenya is attempting every day, and by the way, it doesn't mean that they don't have challenges, but all challenges, the challenges in Kenya are actually challenges that they must undergo. Devolution is making sure they are lifting up, and in fact, negotiation. Nobody in Kenya can achieve the kind of leverage to lead that country for 40 years going forward. It is a logical impossibility. And it's because they have respected the nations that actually formed Kenya, that we are tribal in nature.
Thank you very much. Professor, this country, you have said it is blessed. God has blessed the country both in diversity, but also that when you throw anything, as we say, can grow climate-wise, people, food, all these things. If we were to press a reset button, a political reset button, what would it look like, and what kind of country do we want?
Well, first of all, this phone of mine, to me, might be a very good phone. To young people who understand phones and the development of phones, I may be looking like some very old fellow. Some Stone Age fellow. Yes. Yeah. And therefore, in a world that moves that fast, nobody should be told that, look, I think my time is up. Each one of us should be able to recognize that. And it amazes me. I mean, President Museveni is somebody that I talk to once in a while. And he has given me assignments before. But he also knows that in all media houses that have an opportunity to speak, I would like to tell Ugandans